Hello and welcome to the Black Hat Bushcraft channel. Today I wanted to share with you 4 of the most basic and most versatile tarp configurations that you can use when you're camping in the woods. And I'll go ahead and throw out a disclaimer. For those of you that are very well versed in tarp camping, maybe you already know several configurations, maybe you've camped a lot with a tarp, nothing that I share in this video will particularly be groundbreaking for you. You may pick up a little tip here or there, but for the most part, this is really targeted towards those people that are just getting started with tarp camping. Maybe you only know 1 or 2 configurations. This will help you expand your arsenal, so to speak, and how you can use that tarp and make it more of a versatile piece of kit for you. And give you some other configurations depending on weather conditions or just your personal preference. Also, part of my motivation in doing this video is that the new Pathfinder Nylon Tarp comes in a pack that illustrates 4 basic tarp configurations. So for those of you who maybe are not familiar with how to set these up, I wanted to go through today and give you some basic instructions on how you can set these 4 configurations up for yourself and enjoy, again, some of the most important and the most versatile and the most used tarp configurations in the woods. Let's get started on those right now. All right, let's go ahead and get configuration 1 set up. To get started, I've gone ahead and installed the ridge line. I'm 6 feet tall, and this ridge line is about head high to me. So that seems to work out about perfect. I'm simply going to throw my tarp over the ridge line. And I want to overlap up to the first loop on the tarp, on the first tie-out loop. And now all I need to do is toggle that loop on my ridge line. Now I'm going to pull that out tight, and so the toggle doesn't fall out, I'm going to keep tension on the tarp as I come across. And now I have another Prusik loop right here, which I can insert and toggle off just the same. So now that I have my tarp nice and secure on the ridge line, pulled out with those Prusiks and toggles, I need to stake out the back 2 corners. And now, of course, all we have to do is just simply stake these corners out, pull out at a 45-degree angle, and drive your stake back in the ground at a 45. You don't need any extra attachments. You can go right through the loops on the tarp for this. Of course, I have a route right where I need to go. There we go. Now, to set up tie-outs on the corners of my tarp, I like to use a quick connect and disconnect system. I've gone ahead and tied a bowline loop in one end of my guy line. You could use an overhand loop if you prefer. But what I do is take that loop and run it through the corner tie-out of my tarp. And now, once that loop comes through, I simply pull a bite back through the other side. And now I can insert a toggle right there. And that could be something as simple as a stick that you pick up off the ground or something that you pre-prepare, such as these toggles that I have here. Once I cinch that down, now I have a very secure attachment point. But when I'm ready to pack up my camp, I simply pull the toggle and remove the guy line. So it's a very nice, quick disconnect system and makes this very easy. And now that I have those guy lines attached, as I just showed you, I simply need to stake out those corners. I'm going to just pull the guy line out once again at a 45-degree angle from the tarp, and I drive the stake in the ground at a 45-degree pointing to the tarp. All right, so you can see I have a really good shelter configuration here, and there's a lot of benefits to this style shelter above just the standard 45-degree lean-to. Basically what we have is 1/3 the coverage on the front that we have on the back, instead of just having an open front like a standard lean-to. What that does for you is if you step out in front of this thing 1 step and you build a fire, that heat is going to rise up and it's going to get trapped under this front flap, and it's going to have a tendency to circulate around inside the shelter. So it does a good job of holding heat, again, better than the standard 45-degree lean-to. If we have precipitation too, and the wind's blowing, this will help block some of that from just coming into an open face shelter. Also, if I get up under here, you can see or get a better feel for the space. There's absolutely room inside of the shelter for 2 people to lay with space between them. So it offers you ample space for 1 person in gear or for 2 people easily. And this tarp is really sized well for that type of a shelter. So for all of those reasons, this would be one of my favorite simple and quick deploy shelter setups, and even one that I would choose to use on a leisure camping trip. Alright, so in this next configuration, we're doing what's called flying a tarp. And flying a tarp just means that neither of the 4 corners is touching the ground. We have it up, suspended in the air. I've gone ahead and raised my ridge line above my head height, and you could take this as high as you want. If you're using a large tarp, you could do this up and cover your whole camp with a canopy. In this case, I'm just covering, let's say, a hammock, or if I just want to create a workspace, if it's raining or snowing, sleeting, whatever, this will give me a dry area to work in. So what we're going to do is take the tarp and throw one corner up, over, and just work our way down. Now that I have my tarp centered on the ridge line, I'm going to go ahead and toggle out these 2 center points on either side. Now that my tarp is secured to the ridge line, it's as simple as staking out all 4 corners. Since I know I'll need 4 stakes to pull out these corners, I go ahead and throw those in position. It just makes it that much easier when I go to stake out the corners. Whenever I go to stake out my tarp, I always like to start at opposite corners. So I'm going to do the front right corner and the back left corner first. I try not to pull too tight to begin with. Sometimes that'll pull your tarp kind of wonky on the ridge line. And now that I've got these opposite corners pulled out, I can come back and do the opposite sides. So as you can see, I've accomplished flying this tarp in the air, and that just simply means that the tarp is supported by the ridge line and neither of the 4 corners are touching the ground. For me, this is my #1 way to utilize my tarp when I'm hammock camping. I like an A-frame style setup like this. Just gives me better coverage, and I feel like I get better protection when it does rain. Kind of shields out some of that morning sun so I can sleep later with a little more shade. Just my personal preference. You could really ramp this up on a larger scale if you bring that ridge line up way high above your head in camp and just kind of put a canopy out. If the weather's bad, it gives you a space that you can walk around underneath and a place to work and just keep dry. So this is a very useful technique to fly a tarp. Now, for configuration number 3, we're going to set up one of my personal favorites and probably one of the most utilized tarp configurations of all time, and that is the Plow Point. And I'm going to utilize the same ridge line that I flew my tarp from on configuration 2. And I've just got a prusik loop right here on the line. And the nice thing about utilizing a ridge line with this tarp shelter is you can move that prusik wherever you want on this line, and that will determine the angle that you pull your shelter out. So it gives you some versatility. And you can utilize the tarp tie out on one corner, doesn't matter which corner. In my case, I've attached a small loop of paracord here, and it just makes it a little bit easier for me to connect. I run the prusik through and toggle it out. Very simple. And that's the only connection that this tarp will make here to this ridge line. So you can see this little loop of paracord I've connected to one corner of my tarp. I simply run this prusik loop through that paracord and just insert a toggle. And now just the weight of the tarp will pull out and bind on that. Very simple and quick connect disconnect system. Now at this point I simply stake out 3 corners. I'll start with the very back corner and pull the tarp out tight. And now I'll go to either side. Alright, so you can see what I have here with this Plow Point shelter. It's just an excellent timeless configuration. It's so quick to set this type of shelter up, and it gives you excellent protection in foul weather, as you have wind block and water block on both sides, and of course you have coverage from above. It does a great job if you position the shelter correctly into the wind. It helps cut that wind much better than, say, a lean-to shelter. So it's a very important configuration. Everyone should understand this and be able to utilize it when needed. If you come out front a step and you put your fire here, this does a great job of catching heat. And if we need to, we can always change the pitch of this shelter by lowering the ridge line or attaching it to the tree lower, and we can get a lower profile shelter, which again will hold in heat and cut weather out all the better. So just a great design, and one again that everyone should know, understand, and be able to quickly deploy when you're in the woods. Now for this 4th shelter configuration, I've dropped my ridge line way down to about waist height. This is going to be a much more low profile type shelter. What I've done is I've gone ahead and thrown my tarp over so that it's 50-50. I've got the center seam sitting on the ridge line. At that point, all I'm going to do is feed my prusik loop once again through this center tie out, and I'm going to toggle that off just like with the other configurations that I've been using. So I simply insert the toggle, create a little tension. Now I'm just going to walk down, keeping tension on the tarp so that toggle doesn't fall out. On the opposite end, I've got another prusik loop that I'll do the same with. Just feed that through. And now once again, I'll insert a wooden toggle. I'm going to pull that nice and tight, and that's it. At this point, all I have to do is stake out the corners on this tarp. Now when I go to stake out these corners, just like when I flew the tarp, I'm going to stake one corner, we'll say the front right corner. Now I'm going to come over and stake the back left corner, just so I don't pull tension too much unevenly on the tarp. That will help keep it centered on the ridge line. Now I can stake either corner from there. Alright, so you can see with this A-frame style configuration, what I basically have is a floorless pup tent here. It's much more low profile than any of the other configurations that we've looked at, and it would be great if you wanted to do, say, some stealth camping, or if you're camping in bad weather and you can't utilize a fire. This is a way you can hold in a little more heat with this A-frame style. You could pack that thing in there with insulation, leaves, debris, whatever you can, at least 4 inches compressed, or you can go even more than that. This will help hold in those leaves. You can always pile leaves on the outside around the bottom and just really help hold in your body heat if that was the only way that you could operate. Of course, having a tarp shelter open with a fire to me is always an advantage, and for that reason I don't utilize this configuration very much. But if it were raining hard, or again if you couldn't utilize that fire, this is a great configuration to know. So as always, all of the equipment that you see me use in the field will be linked down below in the description box. I have several affiliate accounts that you'll see there. One is with Self-Reliance Outfitters, also my Amazon influencer page, and I'm also an Exotac affiliate. So you'll see links for each of those pages down below. Any support that you provide to the channel is most appreciated. I know a lot of you guys have been using those links, and I get a small percentage at no cost to you from those sales. So anytime you use those links, I greatly appreciate it. All right, so I hope you guys have enjoyed taking a look at the setup of these 4 basic tarp configurations, and especially for those of you that are just getting started with tarp camping, I hope this has been helpful for you. You can now take these 4 basic configurations and really start to expand on that using bipods and forked sticks. Things like that, you can really customize these shelters to your liking. So now that you have a basic understanding, start to experiment, and I know that you'll find a shelter that you really enjoy using and that will serve you well in the field. I want to thank you guys again for your time, for your interest, for tuning into the video. I look forward to talking to you with another video again very soon. And until that one, you guys take care, be safe, and as always, God bless.